Yeah, so hi everybody. I'm a lawyer, but I'm a cool lawyer. My name is Noah Downs. I work at the law firm of Morrison Rothman LLP, but I've been working in the space for a long time now. Golly, 5 or 6 years, which is forever in this industry. I represent a ton of content creators. That's actually one of my focuses. Is I focus on helping content creators and indie game devs. I can do anything, but that's what I find really gets me out of bed in the morning is helping the folks that are up and coming in both the gaming side and the creation side. So you can follow me. I'm going to just do the Twitter thing ahead of time. You can follow me on Twitter at my lawyer friend or on Twitch at my lawyer friend because I'm actually going to start streaming soon.
Nice.
Yeah, so like more than just for St. Jude.
Cool. That's awesome.
Mhm.
So yeah, so basically, what exactly is this? What is the GDPR? What does this mean?
Yeah, so it is the European Union regulation related to privacy. So there has been a huge movement. Actually, this started when I was in law school. This was already starting to be established.
Mhm.
And I actually wrote like a 20-page paper on this thing as a final. And so it's really cool getting to see it come to fruition. Um, but it's the General Data Privacy Regulation. And it's the EU's way of protecting the consumers on the internet. So obviously the internet has, I hate to use a jaded term like the Wild West, but the internet has
Yeah.
been the Wild West.
And streaming especially because it's so
Yeah,
new.
it's huge. And so the GDPR doesn't just apply to streaming, but what a lot of people actually haven't been thinking about it as it applies to streaming. Um, and now you're going to have to because it's in effect and it's going to affect a lot of people. Um, the GDPR basically protects the consumer on the internet, and the basic principles of it are that you need to obtain consent from a user before you store their data or process their data. And keep in mind, this is all about storing and processing data related to an individual.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
you need to timely notify somebody, typically within 72 hours, if there's been a data breach related to their data. Anybody who you have data on has a right to access the data that you've collected on them. You've already seen Google implement tools that are super useful. I just used it the other day to allow you to access every single scrap of data that Google has for you. It's called
Hmm.
Google Takeout.
Okay.
Allows you to offload all your stuff off of Google if you want. So I use it to back up my old Google Music files. Um, One of the key things about the GDPR is the right to be forgotten, which is, essentially a right to data deletion. And, if you want to not exist on the internet and you're an EU citizen, theoretically, the GDPR allows you to do that. Now, obviously, there's people out there like Russian bots that are going to store things and say screw the GDPR, but
Mhm.
in general, you have a right to be forgotten under the GDPR. And
Okay.
then, there's other things like data portability. People, since they have rights to their own data, you need to be able to, obtain the data, and you also need to be able to know where it's being used outside of the environment where it was collected. So, like if Facebook collects it, you need to know where it was offline, like where did Facebook send it and stuff like that.
Gotcha. So is Twitch responsible for being GDPR compliant and
Yes,
having that information stored?
yeah, Twitch is responsible, but also because of the tools that we have on Twitch, streamers are responsible. So, for example, you can
Okay.
download your streams, and obviously, you do this when you create YouTube only content.
Hmm.
And you say, "Chat, be quiet. I'm turning off notifications. This is YouTube content." It's been 12 months, so, but the so when you do that, you download that VOD and you upload it to YouTube. At
Yeah.
that point, you are responsible for the data.
Okay.
Um, so, like for example, if you were to download this and put it on YouTube, and
Which
you
I
have,
will.
yeah, and here's where we get into I'm your lawyer, so I need to talk less specifically. If a streamer were to have chat on screen and there's an EU citizen in chat, they could, in theory, request that you remove their name from that VOD because
Mhm.
it is data related to them.
Okay.
Username is personally identifiable information because it can be tied to an individual.
But how? Because isn't the whole point of usernames that they're anonymous? How can it be attached to personal data?
So it doesn't necessarily mean that your average layperson can tie it to a person, but keep in mind when you sign up with Twitch, you give them tons of information about yourself, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you're a streamer and you have to submit tax documentation. And so they know who you are, where you live, what you do, what you watch. They do through your bit surveys where people mine for bits. They learn a lot of information about you. There's cookies that they implant on your site, everything.
Right. But we as
Um,
streamers don't have access to that information. We have very limited generalized user data.
Right, but it is collected. And so because the username is tied to an individual, you are collecting data about that individual, even if it's just their username and what they said in chat. It's
Okay.
still data. And so it's as trivial as that,
Hmm.
which makes it an extremely broad and dangerous, quite frankly, regulation when it comes to people that don't know how to interact with it.
Mm-hmm. So how exactly is it applied? So is it just like if someone doesn't want their name, they can just message the streamer and say, "Hey, like you have to do this, you have to scrub my name from your VODs." Is it if they post personal information? Is there a legal process that they have to go through to apply this to you as a streamer?
Yeah, yeah. And so the all good questions, and generally, if somebody, for example, were to upload a YouTube video to, or even to TikTok, then in a stream and a viewer said, "Hey, this has my username on it. I am requesting that you remove it."
Yeah.
Um, then they could do that. And you have to comply within 72 hours, which is part of the reason why, for example, CoCarnage is not using chat on screen
Hmm.
because he has such a massive viewership that it's inevitable that he has somebody in the EU. Um, and so, but generally, it's all of the above. So, and that answered the first two prongs of your question, but I forgot what the third was. What was it?
So there's no formalized process. Like basically, a viewer can just be like, "Hey, I'm from the EU. I want my name removed." Like that's all they have to do.
So they need to submit proof that they're an EU resident and subject to the GDPR. Generally,
So they would have
for
to expose personal information to get their personal information removed.
it's
More
kind of like the
information than we have.
it's kind of like the DMCA, because the DMCA, if you submit a DMCA, you have to put on your personal legal information. So you need to show that this is verifiable. They could even say it's under penalty of perjury, but at that point they're an EU resident, and so that's more than you had before.
Mhm.
Most companies that comply with the GDPR have a process built into their privacy policies by which you notify them. And that's set by the GDPR, and I could look it up for you. I don't have that process perfectly memorized. But in general, when it comes to a streamer who is not, you're not going to create a GDPR privacy policy for your stream. Like that doesn't make sense. And it would be exorbitively expensive.
Is that so? You're talking what in the thousands to create a privacy policy like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
It'd
but if
be,
you're a large streamer, like you're at Co-Carnage's level where there's very high risk and you
mhm.
have the money to do something like that, is that something that is actually possible? Can you create a compliance policy that exempts you from that type of enforcement or creates consent for the viewer that's chatting?
Yeah, yeah. It might be advisable if they are showing that, if that's a big part of the stream. For example, like Hasanabi, like
Yeah.
he has chat on screen all the time, and it might be possible for him to do that. And that said, the consent factor, you have to show that you have consent to put it up. And getting everybody in his chat to click yes before they go in would, one, probably slow down his chat, which it could be. He could use a little bit slowing down his chat flies. And two, I doubt everybody would actually click through that. So
Hmm.
um, what's important to note is that even if you would give consent, it can be withdrawn at any time. So like I could tell you right now, yep, use my name, use all that stuff, and then tomorrow say, I changed my mind. Because
So
it's
how is the streamer actually protected then with a policy like that? Like, what does that actually do?
they wouldn't necessarily be. It would be a stopgap. Like if they got in trouble or had having that policy, one, it's not something that we advise, which is why you don't see it on like Co-Carnage's stuff,
Hmm.
because consent can be withdrawn.
Okay.
Um, uh, that said, what their key is to remove that stuff from their screen.
Mhm.
Now, when you start looking at things like alerts, which is one of the number one questions that we've seen in the
About
wake
to
of
ask that
this,
one. Yeah.
yep. When it comes to alerts and stuff, you are giving affirmative consent with your alerts. So for example, if you go through Stream Elements or you do a Tiltify donation or something like that, you can put anonymous or you can put your name on there.
Yeah.
That said, because you can withdraw consent, in theory later on, you can request that be taken down.
So
Um,
alerts, and it's not just the messages, it's just the appearance of their name that
yeah,
disqualifies them. So alerts, if they cheer, if they sub, if they follow, like those are all vulnerable.
yeah, exactly. Now, keep in mind, this sounds insane, because this is a result that is required by the GDPR. Like if this were to happen, this if a EU resident were to request this, this would be the end result. And it sounds insane because it is. It's because the GDPR did not contemplate things like Twitch.
Mm.
It did not contemplate like live streaming on YouTube. So it has an unintended result that they might try and fix in the future. I know the California CCPA has already undergone one set of revisions that's going into place in 2023.
Okay.
GDPR might as well, but frankly, it took the GDPR a decade to get passed, just because everybody's got different things.
Right. I mean,
And
it's for the European Union. So there's probably a ton of different legal loopholes that they have to cross to
yeah,
get there. So you
yeah.
mentioned the CCPA. So that's a California protection law. Is there other laws like this that exist in the US?
So the two that we are advising most people about are CCPA and GDPR, but there's a lot of legislation that has not yet passed that is in line with the CCPA. It's coming slowly from west to east coast. And however, the CCPA does not apply to all broadcasters. Right now in the CCPA, you have to, it would apply if the broadcaster either has a gross annual revenue of 25 million or more.
I
Um,
totally have that.
I was about to
Totally.
say, I can't
Most
disclose
Twitch
your
partners
information.
do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's big bucks. Or that broadcaster receives the personal information of, what is the number? 50,000 or more California residents, households, or devices. So you
Interesting.
can see for like, your blue collar streamer, your 9 to 5er that streams to between 100 and 700 concurrents, probably doesn't hit that.
Hmm.
But your Coke Carnages, Nick Merckx, Tim the Tatmans, Dr. Lupo's, etc., um, easily hit that. So,
Okay. So I have a question that to me is obvious, but I want to be thorough. If I'm a
mhm.
streamer from the US, can GDPR laws be enforced against me?
Yes, and it's not like you get locked up and go to prison. It's a you get fined more money than you can afford. And if you go to the EU, they'll try and enforce it. So basically, you wouldn't be able to go to TwitchCon Amsterdam next year,
Hmm.
um, if you got that fine. Realistically, we're looking at the practical versus theoretical consequences here. Your practical consequence is that people are watching you, Lowco, because you are really great at what you do, and they love you, and they're not going to go off and say, hey, I'm just gonna troll Lowco. Um, Now, with bigger people, they don't always necessarily have that connection with their viewership.
It's harder to
Yeah,
control that too. I mean, just the scalability. You have so many more people, right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
the
So
risk is so much higher. Um, uh, so you said that it's like tip subscriber alert. What about speaking? What about saying a person's name? What about things like closed captioning, where it's coming up like you're saying their name and their name's coming up? Is that also an issue?
that would also be an issue. It's not the one that we directly looked into, but in theory, that could be an issue. Now, it gets even saltier. Like for example, when I'm in your chat and you normally call me Noah in your chat, most people call me Noah in their chat, even though it's my lawyer friend as the username. That's where it gets even weirder, is like if you actually know the person's name or they've told you to call them something else, you have another piece of information about them. So saying that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing out loud, it gets you into a little bit more trouble. The closed captioning, which is a huge and important accessibility thing. And I'm so grateful to see more people doing it, even like you.
For sure.
Um, I think that that would be capturing the name in there also would be a problem. So
Okay.
base, but here's one thing you need to understand is that, like I said, this is a theory issue. We don't have cases where this has been applied against streamers because up until that Twitter thread like last week, nobody thought about it except for Co.
Yeah, I did not even know it was a thing.
So, like GDPR and CCPA is something we primarily advise like indie dev and major dev AAA clients on. So,
Hmm.
but it's definitely something you need to consider because you're operating.
Hmm. Okay, so now this sounds terrifying, like especially as an interactive streamer, which most people strive to do. Like this could be such a massive headache. But I
Mhm.
think the thing I want to stress is this is for saved content. This isn't like if you have a live stream and you don't save your VODs, or like Twitch automatically will purge your VODs every couple of weeks. Like this realistically isn't a problem at all. Like unless someone like
Exactly.
talked in your chat and then the next day wanted to remove it, right? Like and then you would just delete the bot at that point.
But not even like as long as the streamer isn't taking the content off the platform, it's on Twitch. As long
Oh,
as you don't
interesting.
save it, download it, re-upload it, clip it, put it anywhere. Frankly, even a clip, if it goes to Twitch's native clips link, that's Twitch's deal. It's on them to enforce that. So, if we hop out here and let's see, Sir CB85. Hopefully, might actually be in the EU based on chat history. So if Sir CB85 comes out and says, Twitch, I need you to remove my name from everything. I want to be forgotten.
Mm.
Um, off as he can even be. I want to be forgotten off of this platform. Um, and like want to stay on Facebook, which would be ludicrous. Uh, then Sir CB85, they could notify Twitch. Twitch needs to do all the scrubbing. Um,
And do you think
uh,
Twitch has the capability of handling something like
I have to be careful with what I say,
that?
um, but I am not worried about any backlash on Twitch's failure to remove that to come back onto a streamer. And I don't represent Twitch. So, um, the
Fair.
but that said, now if you downloaded it, uploaded it elsewhere, then that's where it would affect you.
So,
So
like, so why does it, like, if you upload a video to YouTube, why is that not, like, you're creating content on Twitch and you're saying that that is on Twitch. If you're creating content on YouTube, why is that not on YouTube?
So if it's something that was natively created on YouTube, where YouTube controls the means and the information, etc., then that's YouTube's jurisdiction. But for
So if you
example, if
streamed on YouTube, I
right,
guess.
yeah,
Okay.
or for example, if you show a news clip on your channel and it contains an EU resident and they say, hey, you need to remove that, at that point, that's and you're downloading that, putting that elsewhere, that's on you.
Okay.
YouTube's unique in that you can upload static content, which is how the platform is founded, all that jazz. And so if you upload content, you have the dominion and control over that. Whereas YouTube, related to streaming, they control the usernames in the stream chat, whereas you control stuff that's on the screen.
Okay. So I was gonna ask this question, but now I think after talking and realizing that it's just their username that shows up in chat, I don't think it makes much sense anymore. But
Sure.
I'm gonna ask it anyways. Is there anything that streamers and mods can do to mitigate potential damage? I mean, obviously, like just not showing chat on screen seems to be like a very basic thing. But is there anything else that mods and streamers can look out for or do to help mitigate any potential issues?
Yeah, and the irony of the first part is what we're doing right now. Don't have chat on screen. Um, if you
I like
take
to lead
that,
by example here and show you what
yeah,
not to do. So,
yeah. Holy crap, I feel bad saying that as your lawyer, right now. So, but don't have chat on screen, and if you do have chat on screen in your VODs, take it out. For example, I had a conversation, and I'm allowed to talk about this, um, with another client who has had a screen that they go to. It's kind of like their transition screen that has
mhm.
chat on one side. Um, and they have gone through and talked to all their editors and everything, and they're taking out all instances of a name being said, an alert popping through, all that stuff. So they don't need to worry about it.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say that, going forward, like what's already up and making money on other platforms, hopefully you don't get something.
Mhm.
And if you do, take it down, and that takes care of it.
Yeah.
If you Going forward, though, I would recommend, if a clip has an alert in it, edit around that. Or like, for example, you would take your part of the screen here where we're talking and upload elsewhere, without chat on it. And that would be probably my recommendation.
So you're saying
Also,
I shouldn't do publish my famous clips of me yelling at viewers and naming them out loud.
you can do it, but just know that those viewers can ask that you remove them. And frankly, I have a feeling they probably won't ask you to do that, chat. Um,
Realistically, I mean, I like obviously like this is definitely like a small scenario where it's like A, you have to have saved the VODs outside of Twitch, and then B, you have to have someone who is from the EU, then takes the effort to prove that they're from the EU to make a request of removing them from, whatever content that you have of them, which
yeah.
is and then they'd have to find that content to prove that, you still have that, which is like an insane amount of work for, if you run, like, I could see application instances where, like, let's say you were a part of someone's community and that person was, like, made out to be, like, a Nazi or, like a really terrible person. You didn't want to associate with them. That makes sense where you're like, I want my name scrubbed from your VODs. Like, I don't want to associate with you. Like, you are a bad egg.
Yeah.
But realistically, like, there probably aren't a lot of instances where, like, you cared that much to remove yourself from someone's history.
Right, exactly. And it's extremely rare that that would happen. Now, there are arguments that, so one thing, just kind of pull the curtain a little bit further and dive further into the rabbit hole, is GDPR allows processing of data, if it has a valid lawful basis. It's just extremely unlikely that a um, on-screen chat, on-screen alert, etc., would have one of the six lawful bases. Um,
Mm,
for example, those six, and just real quick, you can read this in the article on our site too. Is one, if the individual is given clear consent, which, as we said, can be revoked. Two, if it's necessary for a contract that the business has, which it does not for you. Legal obligation, it's if it's necessary to comply with the law, not here. It's a vital interest, aka it'll save someone's life. And while your stream is useful in life, it's not life-saving.
mhm.
Um, and a public task, if it's something for the public interest, potentially this could qualify as that, as a PSA,
Right.
or if there's a legitimate business interest. And so having chat on screen may fall into a legitimate business interest, but it
Yeah.
would be really difficult to prove that.
Because I mean, I would make the argument that, like, if you are interacting with chat, like you are reading chat, then you're creating content where, as a viewer, like, you can't follow what's happening unless you see what that I'm talking about. Like, if I'm just talking and reading chat, like, it's kind of crucial to that entertainment factor of being able to follow discussion with seeing, like, the comments that are being made, like what I'm reading off.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, to um, you have an easy way around that, by just having chat on a monitor or something that
Yeah,
doesn't.
but if you're watching a VOD of something that already happened,
That's true.
and that you're watching a YouTube video of an important discussion like this,
Yeah, I think that could be an argument, and it's something that I would happily argue for you as we sink to the bottom of the Atlantic, crossing over to the EU.
Okay, so last question that I have for you is where do you see this issue heading? Is this the next music DMCA debacle in a few years' time?
I don't think so, because music is something that is intrinsic to the ambiance of of a stream. Um, every stream has music, whether it's in game, whether it's in the background, etc. Um, having chat on screen is cool, it's useful, but it's not something that everybody does. I could see this flaring up now and again, like the DMCA does, but I let's put it this way: I don't think that we're going to have discussions in the EU about changing this law just for streamers like we're having with the DMCA right now in Congress.
I feel like that
So
would take a lot. And actually, an interesting point that was brought up is games that actually propagate usernames from Twitch chat, like marbles, where your name's on the screen while you're playing. Something else to consider if you're saving those VODs and playing those types of
yeah,
games.
and I can't actually comment on the marbles thing because I
I know.
represent them. Um, but it's something that we have been considering for numerous clients,
Mhm.
um, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. So Noah, that's all the questions I have for you. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add as commentary to the situation before we wrap up?
Yeah, I am just quickly checking the tweet that you put out, and I think we answered those questions. Realistically, what it comes down to is your risk tolerance. So as a broadcaster, how likely is it really that you are going to be noticed and fined by, the agencies in the EU? And for your average person, it's not going to be. It's not a very big risk. And after that, you'd have to determine how likely is it that someone's actually going to request to remove their Twitch handle.
Mhm.
Very unlikely. Chat, don't try and prove a point here. This is a bad time to prove a point. Um, but that said, the safest route is to remove on-screen stuff like that. In terms of remove on-screen stuff for later use. So
Mm,
that would be our recommendation. So
nice. So I want to grab a couple of questions from chat really quick.
just do it.
MetaFox was asking like how big of fines we're potentially talking about for not being GDPR compliant.
Big old fines, like with an M instead of a T. So that's a million instead of 1,000.
What? How can they
Yeah.
fine like as an individual they're gonna fine you millions of dollars?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, rip.
I mean, that could also happen with the DMCA, to be fair.
True, true. And then Mr. Hex asks, what would integrations like featured chat, example, highlighting a single question and answering it, make it easier to justify the legitimate interest basis?
It might. This is why I think the alert conversation is more of a conversation than on-screen chat, because an alert popping up on screen is arguably more of a business interest than just having chat,
Mm,
because you're literally getting paid,
mhm,
in theory, for that. So I think there's more of a justification there and more of an argument. But yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think that it would make it easier to justify. But at the same time, I don't want anyone to be in a situation where they could have just avoided having to deal with it
mhm.
entirely.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for our interview today. If you guys have any more questions about this, feel free to contact my lawyer friend on Twitter. You can check out his law firm, Morrison Rothman. We'll link to his article that he co-wrote for more, lawyer text speak that's more sophisticated than I can summarize things. So definitely check out those links. And, I'm sure we'll have you on the show again sometime, talk about this or other developments in the streaming industry. And as always, thank you so much for your time, Noah.
Of course, and if you got one more second, I just want to
Yeah,
give a quick shout out to my colleague Willeen, who really she is the reason why we are so educated about this stuff. She and Adam Gertz at our office. So big shout out to them as well. So thank you.
awesome. All right, that's going to do it for us. Noah, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you later. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, bye.
Bye.